Hello, scientists. We are doing science today on YouTube. We're going to do, well, for this video, I'll do one experiment, and then I'll do a separate video with another experiment. We are going to do oil and water, which will be building on an experiment we've already done. We did our lava lamps, where we had oil, water. For that, we added food coloring and Alka-Seltzer. And got to see CO2 released into the air, creating bubbles out of the water and oil. This one, we're going to do our water and oil, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about density, about the weight of things. So we already discovered that oil is less dense than water. So the water ends up at the bottom, and the oil, which is lighter, we'll say, ends up at the top. We're going to add to that, and we're going to find out how dense other things are. I have a few things like salt, pepper, and some random things like rubber bands, a feather, some twist ties. So let's get started. We will need water and oil. I have an empty jar because I'm going to put my water, I want to pour some water together here, and then some oil. Although I said that backwards because I like to do it the other way so that I can see the oil rise up. So I am going to put oil first into my empty jar. Hopefully you have some kind of oil at home. It doesn't matter what kind. This is vegetable oil. There's also canola oil. There are all kinds of oils, olive oil, lots of oils. Some kind of oil like this. I'm going to do a little more. You do not need to. I'm going to do a little more just to show you because it comes across on the camera a little bit better. And then I'm going to pour my water in. And we can see the water go down to the bottom, and that's starting to separate. It's got some bubbles. I think this part is just as fun. And again, I'm going to put a bit more in mine just so that you can really see it from the camera. You don't need to, it doesn't really matter. So we've already got it pretty separated. That didn't take very long. I can see lots of bubbles in here. That's actually very pretty. I don't know if you can see that very well on the camera, but you'll have your own to look at. Okay, I am not going to put food coloring in here because I want a very good view of where things are. If you have food coloring and choose to, I would suggest only putting maybe a drop so that you can still see when you put things in, where they settle between your oil and water. So what we're trying to find out is how dense or how heavy some of this stuff is. So you can hypothesize, you can guess. I have pepper. Do we think that is going to sit on the top? Do we think maybe it will settle in between the layers, between the oil and the water? Or do we think it will sink to the bottom or somewhere in between? So I'm going to guess, I've done this before, so I'm going to guess that my pepper is going to sit on the top. It's pretty finely ground pepper, so I don't think it weighs very much. I don't think it's going to be very dense. I'm going to sprinkle a little pepper on there. And even with the big clump that I put in, I'm also going to be careful not to breathe this because pepper makes me sneeze terribly. Look at that. Even with my big clump, it's sitting on the top. Oh, some's starting to sink down. Oh, I wonder if I hadn't clumped it, if it would sit on the top a little bit more. My pepper is slowly sinking down. I wonder where it will settle, and I wonder if that's because I'm shaking it. So this is science. We can try this several times and several different ways and see if you can come up with a conclusion. Oh, my big clump of pepper just all plopped down, and it looks like it's trying to settle. It doesn't look like it's going to go down past the water. Or is it? Look at that. I've never had this happen before. That's very fun. So it's trying to sit there. It's just sitting there right now. It looks like it's maybe slowly moving down. So already that was new for me and very exciting. So I have pepper. I still have some sitting at the top. My clump is trying to go down even farther, and then I have some that's sitting between the layers. So that was interesting. I'm going to try a few more things. So go ahead and get creative. Make sure it's okay with the adults in your household, the things that you're putting in your oil and water mixture. I'm going to put some salt. This is very coarse or thick, big chunks of salt. These look like little crystals. So when I put these in, I'm not surprised that these ones, because they're so heavy and thick, are sinking right down to the bottom. And I wonder, oh, one floated up. I wonder if I used thinner, lighter ground salt, I'm just going to pour this in because I don't want it in my hand, if it would stay on top. But, so now I have my salt on almost each level. I have some on the top still. I don't think you can see that very well. I have some on the top still. I have some in this mid-level here and some sinking down. So my conclusion for the pepper would be, I don't know, what do you think? It can be less dense than the oil, but it also can be more dense than the oil. It's pretty much less dense than the water, except for that it is trying to sneak down there a bit. My very coarse, my very thick salt sunk all the way to the bottom. So that one is more dense or heavier than the oil and the water. I have a feather. Can guess where that one's gonna sit? It's from one of my chickens outside. Tiny little feather. Put that in. And I will be very surprised if this one sinks at all. That is very light. It's sitting. Oh, that's very hard to see through this camera. It's just floating right on the top there. I have a rubber band. What is your hypothesis? What's your guess for where a rubber band is going to sit? I don't remember when I did this one last time. I suspect, I'm guessing that it will sit on the top, but I'm wondering if I maybe tied it into a knot, if then it would sink down farther. Let's find out. It's sitting on the top, but it looks like it might try to sink. Yep. Oh, and it took the feather with it. So that one is sitting now above the water, but below the oil. I might dig that one out later and put it in a knot and see if it goes out farther. I have, this is a twisty tie. So it has a little bit of metal in between and paper on the outside. So I'm going to do what I was talking about with the rubber band. I've got several of these. So I'm going to scrunch this up into a ball. And I'm going to plop that in there. I was hoping it would go all the way to the bottom. That one settled between the oil and the water as well. I've got a lot of stuff there in the in-between area. And I'm wondering if I leave it pretty flat, I need to curve it to fit into my jar. But if I don't put it into a ball, will it float on top? Nope, it's still sunk. All right, so you get the idea. You can put all sorts of things in here. science and we like to experiment. So see what things surprise you. Try to guess, try to have a hypothesis before you put something in as to how dense you think it will be, where it's going to fall. And let me know what interesting things you find out from that. All right, I will see you in class, hopefully next week. Thank you.